Hey, so this is just a quick work in progress update on some GPT-4 integration into AIM to let you create architecture reference models. There's two bits to it. There's prompt management because you're probably going to be rerunning prompts multiple times. And then there's the area where you generate models into. So this is a continuation of a recent post where I showed how to do this manually, which I figured was about 100 times faster than the manual slash non-AI enabled approach. This is sort of faster again. This is less than a minute, which means it changes the nature of generating these models, and it kind of seems to have turned it into a discovery tool and something you can generate not only for the enterprise but for projects, programs, domains, technical capabilities, anything where you want to kind of scope it out and make sure you're informed across all the different scope dimensions before you sort of start spending a lot of money on a project. So let's just start at the end and show an example. So I've done a couple of generic ones. This is kind of what the models look like. They're your typical kind of rectangle within rectangle EA reference models. This is a health drivers one. They can be for any domain, doesn't matter. And the hierarchy can be any Archimate elements. There's about 60. And one of the good things about that is Archimate has pretty well defined semantics. So that really kind of helps get sensible um, answers or sensible diagrams. And you can also see those little dots. So you can have GPT tag the elements. So you can supply the values you want it to tag things with. And it tends to do a pretty good job of that. Or you can just ask it to make up some sensible tags, which it seems to do a good job of as well. So here's what have we got? Here's a capability model. I know I'm showing you this too fast to make sense of, but this is more of a tech demo than a how good is the result demo. Here's one for police. Here's a list of drivers. You can see this one's got descriptions. So GPT does a pretty good job of creating sensible descriptions as well. So you can, I'll show you how to generate these now. I'll do a smaller example just in the interest of time. But what I'm trying to do is build up a set of activities you can do so you don't have to big bang generate the entire model all at once. You can generate the skeleton of it, then you can manually edit the skeleton, then you can add descriptions if you're happy, and then you can expand the model. So yeah, it really is turning out to have turned EA reference model development on its head, where it's just as much a team discovery tool that you can use for enterprise level work or programs or projects or within a domain. And yeah, for the time and effort required to produce these, it really does seem to be a good way to get informed, make sure that you have thought about everything and de-risk um, your annual IT spend. So let's do an example. So if we go into prompts, we've already got a couple of prompts set up. So prompts are the specification of what you want produced. So if we just open a couple. So prompts have just a name, short name, so you can remember what it's for, a bit of a longer description again, so you can remember what it's for. Because assuming you'll probably create a bunch of these. And then a prompt is a multi-level construct. You can keep adding however many levels you want. So each level has the Archimate element type. And again, there's quite a lot of these covering strategy, the business layer, application layer, technology layer, physical layer, motivation layer, which is stakeholders, goals, drivers, value, things like that. And then implementation and migration. So all the pieces of work you want to do to deliver something. So in this example, we've got a hierarchy made out of drivers underpinned by goals. We've asked for around 15 elements in total, single level, but we could say I want a hierarchy, if you like. And then for each of these 15 drivers, there will be up to 5 goals produced. And so what we'll get out of this is for the particular industry we end up generating a model for, we'll end up with the drivers affecting that industry or enterprise or domain or whatever the scope is you're running this for, and then goals that you might set out to achieve in response to address the driver. Now down here we've got other stuff that is fed into GPT. And then you can also add properties. So you might want to kind of go have a property called regulatory, and then go, is there any regulatory impact or regulatory for this driver? Yes or no? You can put the values you want in here, or you can just say I want automatic properties, and then you should sort of take that out. And what will happen is GPT will just kind of, based on what it knows, it'll just make up some sensible values. But we'll just delete that. So that's pretty much what prompts are. So if we go into enterprise, let's create a new view set. Just do farming, something a bit different. And then, so this is your just general description for you on what it is you're doing. This information down here is given to GPT to do content generation. So there's a brief description, then a longer description, and the more sort of precise and clear you can be about this, the better the response will get. So these bits of info, the assumption is that if you're generating a bunch of views, so you might do a capability view, business functional view, stakeholders, maybe business events, like what business events can affect the domain you're doing, and so on. There's 60 or so Archimate elements. That this content's going to be the same for all of them. You want to set the context probably in the same way most of the time. So we're going to say context is farming in New South Wales, including all internal and external activities and parties. Also includes all food production All right, so we'll create that. So this is our view set, or set of views, and then I can go and update that at any time. I might want to keep fine tuning it if I'm not happy with the results I'm getting. So if we do like just create a new view called um, calls and drivers, and we'll generate some content. So you can see this is defaulted in from the view set definition, but you can update that if you want. And then we'll pick from our uh, saved prompt, and we'll click use, and you'll see down here will get updated. And then what I can do is, if you want to sort of change any of this, you can. It doesn't get resaved back into the prompt, but um, yeah, you can modify it if you need to. Now all we do is hit generate, and this will take about a minute, give or take. I kind of got a bit annoyed with this the other day because I was thinking it was taking too long, but then I kind of had to remind myself that usually, like a pretty comprehensive, say, capability model, this is not a capability model, but a pretty comprehensive capability model could maybe take, you know, half a dozen people, 6 or 7 weeks, an hour and a half workshops and refining it. So we're down to 1 minute for what most of the time is something that's useful. Um, you can manually modify it after it's been generated, but most of the time it seems to be, useful that you can um, use the content to go and progress the enterprise piece of work or the project or the program. So you can see now, when I just shut this and zoom out, you can see the flashing text. That kind of indicates we're generating content. So you can see we've got a driver and some goals in response to that. So it's filled in all the descriptions for the drivers. And now we would expect, like we can see, it's this driver, it's indicating it's building the next level of detail. And this is where you can just probably on the video just skip forward um, a minute or so. Just control mouse wheeling there to zoom in and out. Once this has run, you can attach properties to this. So you can click the add tags button, which will run in a minute to get GPT to overlay some tags with when GPT invents some sensible values, or you tell it what values you want, and it does a pretty good job of applying those. And then once you've done that, you can go in and select a shader, which will color code the model, and then you can pivot it. You can pivot it by the tags that have been added. So an example of that might be where um, if you're doing capability model, you might tag it with capabilities that have some regulatory touch point, or maybe you want an initial assessment of capabilities that have either a high, medium, or low exposure to cybersecurity risk. Um, doesn't doesn't seem to be much limit on how clever GPT is in sensibly tagging things. And you can also show this as a diagram and then copy it as a bitmap or a SVG into a PowerPoint presentation, and that's the either the just this raw base colored version or the different versions where you've applied your shaders. Like maybe you want to do a red, amber, green heat map to show something. This is just using the default layout right now, but we can also modify how it's laid out. So in this hierarchy, do each of the layers go down or across, and do they wrap? So you got a fair bit of control over how it's laid out. You can also then just download into OpenExchange, which is the kind of lingua franca of architecture model exchange. So I can download this into OpenExchange and then import it into Archi and then manually arrange it how I want. Almost there, so I've got two to go. In terms of expanding the model, when it's done, actually we might just kind of pause there. Doesn't matter if it hasn't finished. Yeah, in terms of expanding the model, I'll just show you what it looks like. So if we convert that to uh, a diagram format, it looks like that. If we want to change the way it's arranged, we can decide that the second layer should be arranged downwards, and then we get a different layout. So we stopped these two from building up the next level of detail. So what we can do is find for any element we can create a description. This already has a description, but if it didn't, it would add it in. But this create content button is context sensitive. So if we create content now, what do we want? We're going to drive us. We want some goals underneath it. We pick that we want goals, and let's do 5. Generate. There we go. You saw it drop those in, and so under what is it? International trade policies. If weren't sure what tariff and duty regulations were, you can just do create description and throws in a description. So you can build up your models incrementally. You can do the top layer, see if that seems right, and then expand down as necessary. And the way the prompts are done, it'll tend to be sort of MECE, MECE kind of compliant, where there's no semantic kind of gaps and overlaps across the model, which is what you're looking for. You can also then create a prompt for this. So that's basically click this button. This is a description of the diagram, and it automatically includes the Archimate definition of the elements, which GPT finds pretty helpful to come up with sensible answers. So what you would do is click copy, paste this into the ChatGPT interface, and then you can actually just ask it questions about the diagram. That's handy if someone has manually modified it, and you might want to paste in the diagram text like this and ask it, are there any gaps or overlaps that you might have inadvertently created by manually editing it. And just to show you the color coding, um, let's assume in terms of these drivers' goals, maybe we had a business workshop and we want to kind of prioritize things. So I'm just going to like randomly go in. So let's add a property to this and we'll call it priority. This one's high. Not even reading what these are, but that one's medium. That one's low. Oops. Once we've done that, oops. You can see I've used priority 4, but there's high, medium, and low, so we'll color code them. High priority can be like red. Medium can be orange, and low can be green. So there you can see it's color coding the tags, and then once I've used a tag, like once I've used high, I can then just go and quickly tag things as high, medium, or low. So you could do this live in a workshop. It's probably what would work well. You can also then color code stuff. Show properties. So that's a bit better. That's probably perfectly doable in a screen share in Teams or something. So that's the main features of where we're up to. There's going to be more added, but this will be going out, getting deployed shortly. It's going to need a paid account because it chews up GPT tokens. It's running on GPT-4, not 3.5. And yeah, I'll be looking for beta testers who'll need to have a paid account to cover the GPT costs. Thanks.